Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There you go, right down there. If you want to be among the first to hear my weekly takes, NFL, college football, more, right there. So Danny Parkins is my guest today. He is leaving 670 The Score in Chicago. It's a pretty iconic sports talk radio station. And he is moving on to television to be announced. So I think this is tougher for you, and it will be eventually for me, than ever moving off podcasting or television. So I grew up child of divorce. Radio was my friend. My sister was 5-6 years older. So she was out of high school by the time I was in it. So I grew up rurally, on the beach. You had separation between neighbors. I didn't live in a cul-de-sac. I didn't have a car yet. So radio was my friend. Radio is what I dreamed of. Radio's been my entire life. I do a simulcast now, which my radio show's not as good because of that. It's good enough to rate and drive revenue. But there are days that I listen to local radio when I'm around the country in Boston or Chicago or LA, and I miss it. And there are days I think, I wish I could tell a 15-minute story today on radio because I've got a really good one and I can't. The remote changes it. So your radio is really what I grew up with. And now it's just called audio. It's still vibrant, by the way. There's a lot of money in audio. Sean Hannity's doing just fine on 800 stations. So you're leaving 670 The Score, and I think the view will be you're going to a television job, but you don't have that radio mic, and it is the coolest thing in the world when you have a great show. It is so raw and so personal, and so it's a canvas. It's got few limitations. Is it hard for you leaving a dream job, even though it's considered a career upgrade?
Yeah, it is. You nailed it. I left Chicago once to go pursue a radio career with the expressed goal of getting back to Chicago. All I ever wanted to do was host Afternoon Drive in Chicago since I was 16 years old. I would drive to school in the morning and listen to Howard Stern, and I would drive home from school and listen to Mac Yurko and Harry and Boers and Bernstein, two awesome local Chicago radio shows. And then I would be a delivery driver and I would listen to those shows. And I love radio. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. I'm a careerist. I'm ambitious. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. Radio's market share locally and across the country is going down. Podcasts, on demand, internet in cars, all of those things. And while that is probably happening on some level also with TV, this is an opportunity that I didn't play in the NFL. I didn't make Major League Baseball starting pitcher money. Like, this is a opportunity for me to grow my profile, grow my brand, and grow my brand sounds ridiculous, but you know what I mean. And change the life of my 2 sons, hopefully, if it works.
Yeah.
And so am I going to miss it? Yes, no doubt about it. But I'm excited to learn something new. I'm excited to feel like I'm getting better at something. I don't think I really had that anymore in radio. I wasn't bored with the show. I loved the show. I mean, I loved the Parkins and Spiegel show and Shane Reardon and Chris Tannehill, our producers. I loved doing it every single day. But I'm excited to try to get better at something. And you know how it is. I mean, you host a TV show that's simulcast on radio and you have a podcast. Like, I'm not closing the door on radio forever or Chicago forever, or who knows what digital project I'll be able to create in the future. I don't know. I'm 37 years old. I've got a long runway of a career left. And I think that I know there was a little bit of a feeling, if I'm just being totally personal, I don't know how many people care about this, but like, that I had come close to a ceiling in both relevance and revenue in local radio. And then that's a 4-hour-a-day show, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
There's not much time left for other stuff. And then sometimes some things you're not allowed to do because of competitors and companies and that sort of thing. And so I felt like I owed it to myself and my kids when this opportunity came around to take a swing at it and try it. And there will be things that I absolutely wish that I was able to do on the TV show that I could have done on the radio show. There's no doubt about that. But hey, I'm not going to have to watch a baseball game at Tuesday night either anymore. You know, there'll be trade-offs. So yeah, leaving radio is very, very difficult. It was bittersweet, especially because it required me to leave Chicago, but I'm pumped about this, man. I really am.
If you're ever injured, check out Morgan and Morgan. It's America's largest injury law firm, and they are there for you. Over 100 offices nationwide. Think about that. More than 1,000 lawyers with over $20 billion, that's a B, $20 billion recovered for over 500,000 clients. Things happen in life unexpectedly. Submitting an injury claim with Morgan and Morgan is really, really easy. Like winning in the NFL is hard. We know that quarterbacking in the NFL is hard. Submitting a claim is easy. You're ever injured? Check out Morgan and Morgan. Their fee is free unless they win. For more information, go to forthepeople.com/Colin or dial pound law from your cell phone. Morgan and Morgan has a proven track record of fighting for you to get a full and fair compensation if there's an unexpected accident in your life. And I've had a few. So it's interesting. Right now, currently in New York, the Mets are toast. The Yankees bullpen will probably keep them away from a World Series crown, though they're certainly viable. Jets, Giants are pathetic. I still don't buy into the Jets this year. Brooklyn Nets, always a bit of a tire fire. And in Los Angeles, the teams are doing really well. I mean, USC won 12-8, and people are critical of it. It's like they've won 10 games average last 2 years. Like that's our loser. So Chicago sports are interesting because, and I think I told you this, considering the vast sports history, not only is Caleb Williams sort of potentially the first great quarterback, it's a fairly starless town for Chicago. There was a time when Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Siskel and Ebert, Oprah, I think Phil Donahue, like it was everybody. Like it was just, it felt as big as New York. And you've got a hockey player or two that's interesting. But I was thinking the other day, Caleb Williams just isn't a bear. He is he's filling a huge void in a sports crazy city. And, you know Chicago as well as anybody that I bring on the show. Talk a little bit about this city that's kind of missing like it has some founding fathers, like Mike Ditka, but it doesn't really have its next performer. Now, hockey is different, right? It may work in a city, but it's very local. Let's talk about Chicago sports, what's missing and what's coming.
Yeah, you're on it. Connor Bedard is the hockey player that you're referring to, and he is a phenom. He might be the best player in the league in a year or two. He is excellent. Fairly anonymous guy outside of Chicago. Could easily walk down Madison Avenue without being recognized. Angel Reese is now a pretty big star in terms of like Q rating, plays for the Chicago Sky, but obviously that's a thing on the come. That's new, when you're talking about a city of Walter Payton and Mike Ditka and Michael Jordan, Angel Reese and Connor Bedard have a long ways to go. The 2016 Cubs was a team, like they're talking about what the statue will be for that thing. You could make it Chris Bryant, but that would be leaving out John Lester and Anthony Rizzo and Joe Madden and Ben Zobrist. Like that'll probably be a collective. It was about 108 years and the curse. And so singular star power in Chicago historically has really been Bears or Bulls. Ernie Banks had it for sure long time ago. Frank Thomas,
Ryan Sandberg
for sure. as mentioned, Frank Thomas. But in recent vintage, you look to football and basketball, and it's been a while. I mean, we've talked about this before on the pod. Only organization with no 4,000-yard passer, only organization with no 30 touchdown quarterback. And the Bears are the one thing that everyone in Chicago agrees upon. Baseball, split. Cubs and Sox. More Cubs than Sox, but still split. Winter pro sports. Bulls and Blackhawks. Yeah, you can be a fan of both, but 82 hockey games, 82 NBA games, you're a bigger fan of one or the other, inevitably. You care much more about one or the other. It's split for your winter pro sports attention. Everyone's a Bears fan. Everyone cares about the Bears. And the history of the city is Butkus and Singletary and Urlacher and Sayers and Peyton. And Johnny Morris, who played in the 50s, is the all-time leading receiver in Bears franchise history. He has 5,050 career receiving yards. So it's just remarkable. And so, like, offensive passing football, we've never seen it before. You know, a year of Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey, a year of Eric Kramer, a year of Jay Cutler, but nothing sustained. So what Caleb Williams, not only does he have the ability to play like Rodgers or Mahomes, hopefully, and be like a modern quarterback, which this city has never really seen before, but he also is a celebrity. On draft night, he was talking about advice that he got from Denzel Washington, whose number is in his phone. He played in Hollywood. He's cool. He has a huge Instagram following. He was rich upon arrival. Like, there's just, this town is so starved, yeah, for the star power, but also just for excellence on the one thing that everybody can agree on in the city, that if Caleb Williams is what he is supposed to be, he will own that town. Own it.
Yeah. You and I live in cities, and this is interesting, LA and Chicago, where people that don't live there have incredibly strong opinions that are anti that city.
God.
It
It's me off. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, you know, there's things I like. I love Vancouver, BC for what I like it for. Its proximity to the waterfront and the kindness of its people. I like its international flavor. I love London, the history of it, parks everywhere, great hotels, incredible pubs, lounges, best bar city in the country. I like Los Angeles because I love the weather. It's just a vast city, 31 music venues. I mean, just everything you want. I'm literally, I can feel that I just took a nap with my door open, and I can, you know, feel the water and hear the water. It's like, okay. And then there's Chicago, which I love for a lot of reasons. I think it's a vibrant downtown. I think the architecture, the river running through the city, love the people. It's also a great guy town. Sports, music, steaks, beautiful, beautiful people. It's a guy's town. It's my favorite guy's town. Like, nothing against, you know, everybody, but it's like, if you had to say one city in the country, 5 guys, let's party, Chicago's really good. I mean, you basically have a beach on the city. You park a boat 30 yards, stare at the city. I've done that 4 or 5 times. But it's interesting. We live in a time with social media that these cities are highly criticized, tend to lead left with their politics. That's the reason for it. What is it like to live in Chicago when you hear about the outrageous crime and the danger of the city? Like, what is your experience living there?
Okay, so you might remember the last Radiothon that I did 3.5 years ago. You promoted it on the show. I named it the What About Chicago Radiothon because it was a play on words, because when people talk about like gun control, they'll say, well, what about Chicago? They've got strict gun laws, but they still have bad gun violence. And it's just such a bad faith argument, because if you look up the stats on the crime, a huge percentage of the guns that are involved in illegal crime come from Indiana, which is an 8-minute drive away. You pay a $6 toll, and you can go get whatever you need, and then you drive it back in, and they don't search your trunk, and that's part of the issue, right? So we're not surrounded by states that have the same laws as us. And so, and these people that make that argument know it, but they don't care. So does Chicago have its problems? Of course. Does it have poverty? Of course. Does it have a gun violence problem? No doubt about it. But it has so many incredible people that are doing everything in their power to solve those problems and to work on it, that I just hate when people who aren't from here describe it as a war zone because they read a clip of they see a clip on the news and they've never been there. And it's like, stop. You don't care about solving the problem. You're just crapping on people who are actually working to solve it. And so either keep Chicago out of your mouth, get involved in solving the problem if you really care about it, or come here and see that you can go to Oak Street Beach or North Avenue Beach or Michigan Avenue or the West Loop or the United Center or Salt Shed, this new amazing venue right in the heart of the city, or, you know what I mean? Like any number of world-class restaurants and neighborhoods and crazy diverse culture from like Pilsen to Hyde Park to Wicker Park. Like, you know what I mean? It's unbelievable. It's a city of neighborhoods. And so I love Chicago. I love the people. I get defensive when people make those bad faith arguments about it. Would you want to be in the wrong part of town by yourself at 1 a.m? No, probably not. But could you go to the 10 p.m. show at the Chicago Theater and get out at 11:30 or midnight and be perfectly safe, on State Street in downtown Chicago? Of course. And then you could ride the red line to wherever you were going and be fine. And, so it's just so much of it is blown out of proportion and based on stereotypes and used for political purposes that it's honestly upsetting because I do think it does real damage to people. I remember I was in Israel. This was years ago. I was in Israel and I said that I was from Chicago and someone asked me if it was safe. And I was like, really? Israel? You've been literally at war with every country that borders you in your 68 years of existence or whatever it was at the time. And you're asking me about the safety of Chicago. So like the reputation really does matter and it really does travel internationally. But listen, I mean, the weather sucks in the winter. The taxes are high. We've had some corrupt politicians in our day. So our money isn't always spent perfectly. But to me, it's the greatest city in the world.
So it was really funny that Tua, who I think by all accounts is a really nice guy, religious. I'm agnostic, but very religious. I think he's a very decent person. He's bright. He's a hard worker. I don't like his injury history, his size. I think he's very limited in January in cold weather, which is why Tyreek Hill make it work early because it may not work late. But he came out and he really took shots and called Brian Flores, his first coach, a terrible person. And it got me thinking about Andy Reid and Bill Belichick. And that all of Belichick's guys, except maybe Eric Mangini, are harsh and not liked and rough. Josh McDaniel, Charlie Weiss, and I can like him. He loved Greg Schiano, Brian Flores, Joe Judge, Matt Patricia. Matt Patricia pissed off Matt Stafford the day he got into town. And all of Andy Reid's guys, even the ones that have quote unquote failed, Matt Nagy used to reach out to me and say thank you for kind words because his son would listen to me driving to school and he appreciated that his dad got support from one guy in the country. But Andy Reid's guys, Doug Peterson. And so it really got me thinking. First of all, I think if somebody craps on you, especially when you're young, it's one thing if somebody calls me out on my shit and I'm now older. But when you're developing and you're young and somebody buries you, I kind of liked it from Tua. And I'm not a tit for tat person, but I thought, I kind of like that. I'm kind of a fan of that. I said this yesterday. Andy Reid wins 3 straight. We're going to have a real discussion about Belichick and Andy Reid, like a real discussion. Belichick won with one quarterback, and he wins with everybody. But what did you make, and I'm rambling here, but what did you make of Tua's response? I kind of liked that he just called out one of Belichick's guys and said, "He's a terrible person," because I think it will affect him. This is not a good day for Brian Flores.
Yeah, it's not a good day for Flores. I thought it was a really compelling moment that he shared with Levitard, and it was I think part of it was like he's a made guy, right? He got paid. I think
Yeah.
there is some
Yeah.
aspect of, oh, this
Sure.
organization paid me, so they committed to me, not to that guy, so now I can tell some truths. And that doesn't belittle the truth. I just don't know that he says it 18 months ago. I think that there's something to, you have that security, you can tell some truths there. But man, of course it matters. You want you want your kids to believe in themselves. That you don't want them to be delusional, but you want your kids to believe in yourselves. The power of positivity, affirmations is a big thing nowadays. So, so I
Yeah.
think that there is absolutely something to it. I don't know that it overcomes arm strength. And if Tyreek Hill,
Right.
pulls a hamstring in December, I don't know that it overcomes that. But Tua is good, is how I look at Tua. Of course, yeah,
Yeah,
he's
he's
good. Like,
good.
of course they were going to pay him. Their offense has proven that it can be elite. When I hear people talk about, well, they got too many pass rushers get hurt, or they didn't invest enough in their interior of their offensive line, or cold weather, I think that speaks to kind of the issue with Tua, is that there's some limitations, there's some concerns. I think if he didn't have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and one of the five best offensive play callers in the league, we'd have more questions about Tua. But man, I will very rarely, if ever, criticize guys for honesty. It's honest. I don't know if it's 100% truthful. I'm sure Brian Flores has a different version of events, but like that was clearly Tua's truth, and he told it to us. And I think that was incredibly compelling stuff. As for your Andy Reid caveat, I worked in Kansas City before Chicago, so I covered those teams when he got there.
Yeah.
And I thought I had an appreciation for what he was in Philly. And because he was ahead of the curve. Like, if you remember when he got run out of Philly, people were like, he likes to pass the ball more than he likes to run the ball. Now that's the
Yes.
entire league. Like he was
Yeah.
ahead of the curve. And the list is incredible. Donovan McNabb, Kevin Cobb, Jeff Garcia, Mike Vick, Alex Smith, and then, of course, Mahomes. All of those guys, best years of their career with Andy Reid. Every
Yep.
every
Everyone.
single one. And like, I don't know, Mike Vick and Alex Smith are pretty different. Like Donovan McNabb and Kevin Cobb are not exactly the same quarterback. So that speaks to a level of offensive geniusness that I will be surprised if, when Andy Reid hangs it up, people actually call him the GOAT. Like, if that is ever a majority opinion, because we are such a rings culture and he obviously won't catch Belichick.
Yeah.
But in terms of, hey man, Bill Belichick, he doesn't have a winning record without Brady. Andy Reid's got a winning record with a lot of different guys. He's hit the
Yep.
over on his win total every year he's been in Kansas City. He is undefeated to the over since he's been a Chief. That is insane. So like, he's just he's the best coach in the NFL. I don't think it's particularly close.
Yeah, and I do think I've always had a theory that why his assistants do better. So Andy is a teacher. Belichick's not. Belichick's more authoritarian. Belichick's really smart. Mom spoke several languages. Dad was a pioneer in scouting. But proximity to genius doesn't equal genius, right? You can have the smartest friend in the world. That doesn't make you smarter. You may be curious and ask questions, but it doesn't raise your IQ. Teachers succeed. If you look at Bill Walsh, Mike Holmgren, Andy Reid, many of the great offensive coaches intellectually shared wisdom. A lot of the defensive coaches, coaching trees, they were culture builders. They were authoritative. They're not teachers. And I don't think Belichick is. I think Belichick was attracted to people, a lot of them Northeast guys, that could handle him. He liked the gruffness because he knew what he was and what he wasn't, and he built a wall around him of really tough coaches. Whereas Andy builds he builds a class and he's the mentor of the class and he's constantly teaching. That's kind of my theory on the two. And both work, by the way, clearly. But if I've always been impressed, it's one thing to be successful at something, but there is value in like, oh, this radio host worked in this city and that city and at the network and that TV show, other than just being, he dominated in Iowa. Nothing against Iowa. So like for you, you've crushed in radio. Now you want to try, cable television. So I feel like Andy Reid, the depth of his success, if he wins 3 in a row, I have no problem saying that's the best football coach I've ever seen.
Yeah, I love that, and I hope that more people do. You helped me promote the book that I co-authored, Pipeline to the Pros, and that's not to get a big plug in there, but like it's about coaching and management pipeline in the NBA from the D3 level to the NBA level, and the recurring theme of the book, or one of them, was coaching is teaching. Period. Coaching is teaching. And a reason why so many of those guys from that background worked so well is because they were literally teachers, whether they were gym teachers or history teachers or whatever, because they needed to do it to have the privilege of coaching the basketball team. And so, hey, does Patrick Ewing buy in to what Jeff Van Gundy is saying when Jeff Van Gundy looks like a pipsqueak next to him? Yeah, he buys into it if Jeff Van Gundy can teach him something. If he can make him better. And, I was in those locker rooms with the Chiefs in like the early part of this rise. And so, Romeo Crennel was there before, Todd Haley was there before, Scott Pioli, who was on the Belichick New England. I mean, there was a front page article in the Kansas City Star. The headline was Arrowhead Anxiety. People thought that they were bugging the rooms. Like, you know what I mean? It was a culture of like fear and dictatorship, what you're talking about. And Andy Reid came in and they marveled at it. It was night and day, black and white. They could not believe the culture shift that one coach was able to do for an organization. He hired John Dorsey, and then he has a say in hiring Brett Veach. Like, he's the top dog in that organization. He doesn't want the personnel say like he had in Philly for a minute. It burnt him out. But everything runs through the Andy Reid ethos. And yes, he empowers his coaches a ton. So much so that I think he like kind of lies on their behalf to get them jobs. Like, he'll be like, oh yeah, Matt Nagy, he was calling those plays. No, he wasn't. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Andy Reid never stopped calling plays, but he will do it to get his guys promoted. And then as soon as Matt Nagy failed in Chicago, he brought him right back to Kansas City. And Mahomes swears by him, by the way. Yeah. Swears by Matt Nagy.
So I threw this out today on my radio show. I said, baseball's making a lot of changes now, not because they want to, but because they have to. I mean, now we've seen runner on second base in extra innings. They're discussing 6 innings for starting pitchers, the pitch clock, the DH, the
automatic balls and strikes, which they're doing in the minors. Yeah.
Okay, why? Because ESPN's not interested. They bet on hockey, not baseball. We have bet on college football, NFL World Cup, and Lachlan Murdoch, I think I can say this, doesn't appear to be as big a baseball fan as an NFL fan and a World Cup fan. He's a global traveler, a global citizen. And the Apple deal for baseball was a 0. The Roku deal's embarrassing. And baseball has to make changes. And I said this. I've been into baseball this season because I think Ohtani's amazing. The Yankees are good. I like Bryce Harper. We have like 3 faces of the league. I think Mookie Betts could be better than all of them, but we have like some really domestic stars. And I said, but here's what's funny. Even in a year of the Olympics, the Euros, Copa, WNBA is smashing records. Those all go away next year. And the election. So Fox News, MSNBC, and CNN's ratings are up. NBC's rating Olympics, up. Fox, Copa, Euros, up. They all disappear next year. And I said, if I was a network president, you give me baseball, WNBA, 8-year deal, and one costs 1/7 of the other with Caitlin Clark, I would choose the WNBA. And I would not have said that a year ago. You're part of the Angel Reese thing. And Danny, I feel like it's a little bird magic two legendary players, rivals in college, come to the NBA immediately good. I mean, Angel Reese is like a double-double record. Caitlin Clark, the playmaker, the assist record. I've never felt this before. I'm watching the WNBA on weekends over baseball, and it's been a good baseball year.
It has been a good baseball year. So I'm with you, especially because one story, and you know this from starting a business, my parents were market people. I feel like I have an okay understanding of it. You can tell a story of growth. That matters a lot. Baseball, the arrow is going down. The WNBA, the arrow is going up. That matters, right? That inherently matters to like Wall Street, investors, the narrative that you can sell, all of those things. The problem that baseball has, as I see it, because I do think the pitch clock was excellent. Theo Epstein is the smartest executive I've ever talked to in sports. He now is advising Major League Baseball on some of this stuff. Like, I think that they're trying. They can't market stars. I don't believe that it's that. It's too hard. Too hard to hit the ball. Like, these pitchers have gotten so good, and the spin rate is so high, and the velocity is so high that you go to these games and every team has a couple of starters and 3 or 4 relievers whose average fastball velocity is 98 miles an hour or above. And the starter pitches into the 5th, and then they bring in 98, 98, 99, 102. There's 12 or 13 combined strikeouts. When you see Roger Clemens or Justin Verlander have 13 strikeouts by himself, you're like, I'm watching individual greatness. But when it's 4 or 5 guys combining for 13 strikeouts, and I am a pretty astute baseball fan, and I've heard of 1 or 2 of them, like that's an inherent, it's boring. It's boring. Yeah. The ball is not in play enough. So I love that they're trying things. I like the idea of like some real radical changes. Like, should we do construction on stadiums and widen the outfield? And
how about this? Lower the mound. They did it in Bob Gibson in the late 60s because he was you couldn't hit Bob Gibson. You lower the mound 6 inches and the ball's not coming down at you, and the hitting averages all go up 15. 260 becomes 275.
If you can do that, that's great. I was surprised at this. They tried at one of the lower levels. I think it was single A. It might have even been lower than that. They tried moving the mound back from 60 feet, 6 inches to like 61.6, thinking that the velocity wouldn't be as crazy. And the offensive numbers actually went down. I don't know what the explanation for that was. If like the hook and like the curvature was too big or like more dramatic. I have no idea why that didn't work. Like that seemed counterintuitive to me. But whatever you can do, lowering the mound, widening the outfield, more foul, like less foul territory. I mean, I'd be open to a lot of things, like limiting the number of pitchers on a roster, saying that you've got to go 5 innings or 6 innings for a starting pitcher. A foul ball isn't a strike. Like I'd be interested in a lot of things to explore to figure out a way to inject some offense into the game, because I don't know. I mean, Fox had it. Did you watch the baseball All-Star game? I don't know if you watched or not.
I watched innings of it. I watched the early innings.
Those pitchers, like Mason Miller. Okay. How could you possibly hit it? Like they're the best hitters in the world and the best pitchers in the world, and the best pitchers won. Like it was a low scoring game, and so it's very, very hard to generate offense. And because the science says and the stats say that when a pitcher goes 3 times through a lineup, they are exponentially more likely to allow more runs. Starters are getting pulled. Relievers are being inserted into the game. You're seeing all of these pitching changes, and it used to be a huge deal. Oh, Tom Glavine is starting today. Greg Maddux is starting today. My ticket is worth more because I want to go see that guy. Now you go see Paul Skeens. Yeah, he's amazing. He might strike out 10, but he could be pulled after the 5th inning. And with the pitch clock, that's an hour and 15 minutes. So you got to figure out ways to get more offense into that sport.
Listen, I have a deal with DraftKings, but beyond that, I had a deal before that with their primary rival. Before that, I lived in Vegas for 7 years, so I didn't gamble on sports growing up. I didn't grow up in a city. There was nobody to gamble with. We were all poor. But when I went to Vegas for 7 years out of college, my favorite thing to do after the 11 o'clock news, where I was the sports anchor on a Friday night during the football season, was go to Palace Station and bet parlays and bet like $20 on 4 different cards. And then wake up back when college football started at 9 a.m. Pacific because, it didn't have the audience. Now they've pushed all the games back for the revenue and the audience. But sports gambling really well. You and Nick Wright both have the poker brain. And I saw the other day somebody, there was a do-gooder, there was a media do-gooder criticizing sports gambling. And I'm not, obviously, I'm pro media, and I think fake news is ridiculous. But I do think the media can be out of touch, can be really out of touch on stuff. I thought there was too much hysteria. Though I was pro-vaccine, there was a lot of hysteria. I thought canceling college football for young people to sit outside in the sun in September was a little overwrought. They closed the beaches in California and skateboard parks. It just was overreaching. The media was hysterical when we knew pretty quickly with the science, under 22, if you didn't have physical maladies, you were fine. It was you were going to make it. So I also think some of the media can be really preachy on sports gambling. So in the companies I've worked with, the average bet is $4. It's easier to ruin your life for $4 eating fast food burgers than it is gambling on sports. Your health will deteriorate faster than your wallet on $4 a bet. And I also think one of the things that sports gambling offers, and I think it's really important in a very tribal, angry time in America, is community. I love betting with somebody and we have the opposite bet of the same bet. It's just fun. Maybe it's my guy DNA. I love having bets with buddies on games and we're laughing and high-fiving. Where are you on sports betting? First of all, that I reached out to you a year and a half ago to bring you to the volume based on your sports gambling. What is your overarching opinion on it, its dangers, and its how do you feel about it?
Well, listen, I love sports gambling. I've been betting on sports since I was 15, and it was definitely not legal in the suburbs of Chicago. Again, parents as market people, I don't look at it as that entirely different. Now, obviously, you make a bet on Nvidia, you get it wrong, and the stock goes down. It doesn't go to zero. You can lose a bet and it goes to zero. So I understand why there are differences, but it's all about, it's a market. That's what it is. It's information. I think it's good for just us people, sports consumers, to have these really smart numbers people injecting unbiased probability into the discussion of sports. I think it makes people smarter if it is disseminated in an intelligent way. And also, as just a student of history, prohibition doesn't work. It didn't work for alcohol. It doesn't work for the sex trade. It doesn't work for gambling. It doesn't work for marijuana. I'm not saying that everything in the world should be legal. I understand why some things need to be illegal. But generally speaking, if it's not going to kill you, I do believe that it should be legal and then regulated and taxed, and that actually would be safer and better for all people involved. So I don't really worry too much about the dangers. Of course, we should have the disclaimers attached, the 1-800-GAMBLER, of course that should exist. Of course, responsible game. Like, I don't like when people say, I forget who it was. Someone just had to backtrack on one of the big broadcasts where they came out and they said, this is a can't lose. This is a lock. Bet your mortgage on it.
Yeah.
And he said it kind of flippantly, but then people got on him. I forget who it was. People could Google the story. It happened, I don't know, a few months ago. Don't say that, because some idiot out there might actually bet their mortgage, and you could argue I shouldn't be responsible for that. But it's, in general, as long as it is done as, hey, this is entertainment. Don't bet what you can afford to lose. And you can either do it because you are a Bears fan and you want to bet on the Bears, or you say, I want to bet on the Seahawks because I think that 4.5 is a good number and it should be 3. And I'm getting 1.5 of closing line value. And that's off the key number of 3 and across 4 as an added bonus. And I got in early on the bet on, Sunday night when they posted the line. And then by the time kickoff happened, 6.5 days later, the market had corrected in my favor. Like, you can do it both ways. You could bet for fun, or you could bet to try to be a sharp, or you could bet somewhere in between. And if you don't like gambling, don't. It's no one is forcing you to do it. I understand that it is if you have no interest in it and now you're seeing it everywhere, it feels like you're inundated with it. But you talk to guys who did local radio like longer than I did. It used to be every commercial was for a car dealership. And then it became everyone was for a beer or alcohol brand. Now it's for a sports book. Like, it's whoever is the newer thing in the advertising space, they take over and they mass produce to try to get market share. So these things go in cycles, but people have been gambling on sports for the entire history of sports. I don't really pearl clutch about any of this. I don't do it. Oh, won't somebody please think of the children? That doesn't really concern me too much. And I look at it as enhancement, frankly. It's like bacon on a cheeseburger. I like cheeseburgers. I like bacon on a cheeseburger more. I like watching football. I like watching football more if I have a bet on it. Like, honestly, that's what it is. It just enhances my sports experience.
Have you been hungry for some college football? I am. I cannot wait. And if you love college football as much as I do, jump in on the DraftKings Sportsbook. Go to the app. Takes you 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes to download. It's a small slate of games, but it's week 0. We got the one over in Dublin. And go to the DraftKings app. If you're a first-timer, let's make it easy. Just pick a team to win. Select a team. Place your first bet. This is going to be a gigantic season because of conference realignment. There's so much mystery and so much fun and so many big games. Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Georgia. That's now a part of our life. If you've always loved college football, add a layer to it. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Put in the name Colin. By the way, when you download the app, put in the name Colin. That's $200 in bonus bets. If you put in the code Colin, you get $200 in bonus bets from DraftKings, betting just $5. That's a nice head start. It's like you won without winning. Pick a team. It's simple. Download it. Code Colin. $200 off 5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. So whenever I criticize somebody a lot, like Baker Mayfield, I always start with a qualifier. I think he and his wife are great people. I know a private story about them that is very complimentary. I think he's one of the 20 best quarterbacks in the league, and I'm rooting for him. I just thought he was overdrafted and immature. And so Aaron Rodgers, I feel the same way. I'd vote him for the Hall of Fame. I think there are qualities about him that were better than Aaron Rodgers, or I think there are qualities about him that are better than Brett Favre. But he has become, it feels to me, podcast guest / quarterback, that he is sort of just doing his own thing. Bill Simmons always had this theory I've had a similar one, like the older you get, the richer you get. If you're not married, you get a little weird. I could name like 4 people off the top of my head. You get a little odd. You're on your phone too much. But I've had so many opinions about Aaron Rodgers. I just don't think he's going to be as good as a quarterback as people think. His last year in Green Bay, he wasn't as good as Jordan Love now, with a very good offensive line, a good offensive coach, and like symmetry inside the building. I don't know if Saleh can coach. Nat Hackett's a disaster. And that O-line, as they cross your fingers, he won't be the best quarterback in his division. And probably with Tua and Josh Allen, he'll be the 3rd most productive. So where do you stand on Rodgers? I don't believe you can be a savior at 40 years old off a major surgery with Josh Allen, Mike McDaniel, and Tua in a division. I think C.J. Stroud can in his division. I don't think Aaron can at his age with those quarterbacks in his division. Where do you stand on him?
The coming off the injury part is the huge caveat, right? Because we saw Brady do it in Tampa. So It is
Yeah.
possible, but 40-year-old coming off of Achilles injury with, we'll say, other interests, to put it mildly. Like he's not Brady, right? Brady maniacal about football. Football, football, football,
Right.
football, football. Obviously, that's not Rodgers. This is maybe not as fact-based and analytical as you would come to expect an opinion of mine to be. I just hope he's good so that we haven't been wasting our time these last 2 years. We have talked so much about Aaron Rodgers on Pat McAfee and Aaron Rodgers on Joe Rogan and Aaron Rodgers and RFK and Aaron Rodgers the vaccine and Aaron Rodgers the toxic internet brain and Aaron Rodgers the troll. I'm just like, man, he is one of the most talented quarterbacks that I've ever seen play the position. He influenced Mahomes. He influenced Caleb. He is a first ballot Hall of Famer. The only player in the history of the sport
Yeah.
with more MVPs than him is Peyton Manning. He is one of the first guys that I've ever seen who was a gunslinger who didn't turn the ball over. Like he has a 45 touchdown, 6 interception season on his list. Like that is one of the craziest seasons I've ever seen anyone have in my life. And so like there's just been so many column inches and so many takes and so much word vomit on Aaron Rodgers the last 2 years that I feel like we deserve Jets Bengals divisional weekend. Like I feel like we deserve it as sports fans. I want to see Aaron Rodgers, Josh Allen for the division week 17. I'm rooting for him to be better than his weirdness and his age and his injury suggest that he should be, because they're going to be on national TV 6 times again. Like it is really compelling sports theater. And it sucked watching Zach Wilson on Monday Night Football last year. I don't want to do that type of thing again. So I am hoping that the conversation about Aaron Rodgers can be about football again, because he's simply one of the greatest football players that I've ever seen. And if he goes out and he's just bad, he'll still be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He'll be a bit of a punchline, and that would suck. Because, yeah, I disagree with a ton of things that he said, but I still love watching the guy play football. And so I'm really hoping that we get some version. He's not going to be 45-6, but I hope we get a great version of Aaron Rodgers, because then at least it will have made the last 2 years of nonsense feel like it mattered in a sports sense.
Yeah, it'd be like promising your kids a great vacation for 2 years, and then you go to Hawaii and there's a tropical storm.
Yes. You're the perfect, that's the perfect analogy. Exactly. It's like, come on, man. Like I want, if it's 30-6 Niners Jets in week 1 and he throws 3 picks, I'm going to be like, come on. I don't care about what he says on Tuesday. Like, just like, give me one of those throws where you flick it with your wrist, it goes 30 yards on a dime, Garrett Wilson catches it, and that game's 27-24 in the fourth quarter with 2 minutes left. Like, give me that to make all this other nonsense worth something.
So let me ask you, Danny Parkins, 670 the score. He just left that Chicago iconic radio station for a television deal to be announced. You've had a different summer. How has it been for you? You just wrapped up a big charity.
Yeah, I gotta say, this was not how I drew up my summer. I was looking for like family vacation and, maybe a golf trip with some buddies and a little R&R. But, the Wednesday to Saturday of this last week is the craziest 4-day stretch of my career. And it's not even close. Wednesday, we wrapped up the Parkins and Spiegel show. So got a goodbye show in radio. And that's rare. There are legends of the business that sometimes will be fired and never get to say goodbye to their audience. So, we got to do it up big and talk to people who really mattered to the show and to us. And my family came in and surprised me in studio for the last segment, which was really emotional. I kind of have lived my life on the radio, and so shared things about my first son being in the hospital from his premature birth, and my dad with dementia and passing away, my brother passing away. So it was super emotional bringing them all in. But then that coincided with something that I've been working on for literally over a year, 13 months, planning a radiothon for cancer research in partnership with the Cubs. I broadcast for 24 hours Thursday to Friday in honor of my brother Brad, who passed away from glioblastoma, terminal brain cancer. Raised $560,000 in 24 hours.
Wow.
Brought on, about 14 cancer patients, 3 world-renowned doctors, and then between 9P and 4A took 60 calls from people telling their cancer stories. Just incredibly emotional. People making $5 donations, people making surprise $15,000 donations. Tom Ricketts, owner of the Cubs, donated 25 grand, not expected. It was just Ryan
Wow.
Sandberg announced for the first time that he was cancer free, like live on the air, unplanned. I had no idea. He just happened to have his last oncology appointment that morning and then came in and announced it. So, I mean, truly one of the craziest broadcast days of my life. Leading into Saturday at Wrigley, we had planned, and it had never happened before, the iconic stand up to cancer moment that happens at the World Series or All-Star game.
Yeah.
It had never happened at a local game, at a local ballpark. So the Cubs, myself, Stand Up to Cancer, have been planning this event for a long time. And Brad's son, my nephew, got to throw out the first pitch to Craig Counsell, the Cubs manager, who happened to grow up with my brother Brad, childhood best friends. So I had my whole family on the field where my Brad's son throws out the first pitch. Then the stadium stands for cancer at the end of the 4th inning. I've got 10 family members standing, holding, my brother's name up there. And it was just, it was incredible. It was just so emotional. And this charity that I've joined the board of directors of, I know I'm rambling a little bit, but it was just like wrapping up a radio show that I loved, wrapping up this charity event that I'd planned for so long, doing this like incredibly symbolic thing in my brother's honor. It's just been a whirlwind of a 96 hours, man.
Well, congratulations and your next chapter. I'm not going to give it away, but it's exciting, and it's I think one of the more enjoyable things for me at this point in my life is watching young, talented people get opportunities and help lubricate those. And you're going to crush it wherever you go. And we both know where you're going.
No, I appreciate. No, that's the thing.
Uh,
Like after the radiothon, I'm supposed to have a week off, and now it's I'm coming to you from a hotel room. So like my life is not slowing down anytime soon. But listen, I wouldn't have it any other way. I could not be more excited about what's next. You just have to promise that you'll have me on the pod when we can actually talk about it.
yes, I will. I promise. All right, Danny, whatever you're doing, the mystery that's about to be unveiled. Hope you're a regular on my podcast, and it's good talking again, buddy. And congrats on all your
Colin,
success.
thank you so much. Anytime I would love to come on. Thank you, sir.